Cool. So we are live. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Ryan Timms, and I'll be hosting this session. I'm a communications manager here at Your Overseas Home. So today we'll be discussing how you should prepare for your viewing trip in Portugal. It's great to have you all here with us today, whether you're live or catching up on demand. We're delighted to able to help you realize your dream to purchase an overseas property. Today's session will take about 45 minutes to an hour. For those of you listening live, there will be plenty of opportunity to ask your questions to David from Olive Homes Portugal. If you do wish to ask anything, please type your query into the questions tab on the right hand side of your screen. So if you do need a reminder of anything discussed today or want to share this with your family and friends, a replay will also be available on Your Overseas Home website to watch at your leisure. That is on our demand section, so you can, after this webinar, you can go on and click it and replay it as many times as you want. So I'm delighted to be joined by David from Olive Homes Portugal. So David, it would be great if you could give a quick summary of who you are and how Olive Homes can help our listeners today.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So, well, yeah, as Ryan said, so my name is David Rowett. I run a company called Olive Homes, and we're based in the central Algarve, near Villamora. And but we look after all of the Algarve, but our strengths do lie in the central area because that's where most of my staff are based. Although I've expanded recently into the western Algarve, so we've got more of a dedicated office there as well now. Personally, I've been in Portugal for 17 years. I've always sold property since I've been here. I was a NatWest Bank manager before I came. And so during my time here, I worked for a real estate company for 5 years, and I've been self-employed for the last 10 years. Olive Homes has a small dedicated team. There's 10 of us now. Very proud of the team. We all work hard. Nothing's too much trouble. We all run around, try to look after the clients, make sure that everything's taken care of from start until finish. We hopefully finish with a nice picture and a testimonial, and clients are delighted with everything. So that's really good. And it's obviously not just the property we sell. We understand that clients are investing in a overseas property. So there's a lot of services we provide that we add on, such as an introduction to a lawyer, furniture company, management company, all the other bits and pieces. So it is to like a one-stop shop really. But yeah, when the clients contact us and say what we're after, then we'll work hard to try and find what they're after. We can work with other agencies as well, and all being well, we can find somewhere and go through the whole process, and it'll be a perfect experience for yourselves and us as well.
Perfect. Thanks for that, David. So obviously the theme of this webinar is viewing trips when you obviously want to go to Portugal. So we've got a plan here to go through pre-viewing trip questions, on the day, on the trip questions. So what would you expect when you're actually out there on the trip, and after the viewing trip. So if we can start off, just simple question, like how do you organize a viewing trip with yourself at Olive Homes?
Okay, so a client will either inquire on our website directly, a portal, and we'll then start talking to them. It can either be about a specific property, or clients can leave it open and say, we were after a 2-bedroom apartment near the sea or something like that. So obviously either myself or one of my team will get in contact with you. What normally happens is when the inquiries come through, I see all the inquiries, and I decide who would be the best person who's got the best expertise to look after that particular person. So you'll get contacted by our company. But more importantly, from the client's point of view, then they've just got to think about what is it they're after. So consider the budget. What would that be in euros? Do they need a mortgage? Especially nowadays, if you're coming over and you do need a mortgage, and most non-residents can get a mortgage here. It's not difficult. If you think you should get a mortgage, you probably will. So the bank will want 6 months bank statements, pay slips, proof of tax returns if you're self-employed, accounts if you're self-employed. So normally what we can do is try to arrange a mortgage in principle before you come. That's one of the things that's important before you come. The reason it's important before you come is the market's still sort of dominated really by the sellers, because the demand's so high. So it's important if you come over and you find what you're looking for, that when we negotiate with the owner, that you're in a position of strength. So that helps if you can say, yes, I've got a mortgage, but I've already spoken to the bank and it's agreed in principle. So in effect, you put yourself in the same bracket as a cash buyer. And that means we can tell the owner that, you know, the speed should be quite quickly. It should be done the speed should be quick, and the transaction should be done quickly. So basically, before you come, then which areas are of interest to you, or you leave it open and ask us to recommend. Your budget, what sort of property you're after. So again, we can advise if your budget is 750,000 euros, we can recommend this or that. If it's 250,000 euros, something else. So, and then really I'd always recommend having an open mind, because we do have clients who come and say, we'd like a villa up in the hills with a distant sea view. But then when we drive them up there, they realize it takes a little bit too long to drive there from the coast, so they change their minds and they might come back down closer to the coast. And some people switch from a villa to an apartment, and others switch from an apartment to a villa. So it really is a sort of voyage of discovery. I would suggest, in terms of the amount of time you give to coming out, that at least 3 days really. The first day can often be more of a discovery in terms of ourselves working out what you want. We see the whole day might be a waste of time, but in a way that's a good waste of time, because we get feedback as to what you don't like. Second day, we hopefully can catch up and either revisit something you did like or plan other things. And then on the third day, we hopefully can then start going through, if we find a place and you negotiate and we agree the price, and on the third day we can run around and take care of all the extra bits and pieces that are necessary.
Nice. Thank you very much for that. That's some good insight on what to do before. So as obviously a pre-trip strategy as well, if someone was going to book a viewing trip, should they book it with the residents they kind of wanted to move with? So when they're out there, they're with the people obviously they're going to purchase the property with.
Say again, sorry, Ryan. So in terms of whoever's going to use the apartment or live there, they should all. Yeah. So sometimes, most of the time, if it's a family or husband and wife, they both come. Sometimes if one of them are working, then obviously it's difficult. But then it's much more difficult for the person to make a decision as to whether they would like it. But it's best that everybody come. Whoever needs to make the decision, that they all come. But what we've got on our website, which is unique really, is what we call our virtual experience. And that actually has on most of the properties, you have a full walkthrough. It's a Matterport production, which is the top end. And basically you can have a full walk through the properties virtually. We now do floor plans on almost everything, which we produce in-house. So clients will get a really good idea of the dimensions, overhead videos. And so when we were going through the pandemic and everything, we pushed on and on to get as much technology on our website as possible. So what that does mean sometimes is, even if everybody's here, if not all the people that are here need to make a decision, or if you want to ring back and speak to your spouse or your family, then they've got the opportunity to go onto our website at that stage, if necessary, to have a look in more detail at the property. It's not as quite like being there, but it's as near as you can get without being there.
Perfect. That sounds good. That's a cool little trip feature that you have on your website, to be able to look at the properties like that. So obviously when people come on a viewing trip, some might have some free time to do stuff outside the actual viewing trip. So anything you kind of recommend for people to do to take an initiative to get like a head start of when they're there?
Well, of course, I mean, at the end of the day, the location's quite vital as to where people want to be. So for a short period of time, I worked on the Costa del Sol when I was employed initially abroad. And I know I shouldn't talk badly of the Costa del Sol, but for me, it was sort of repeat. All the towns all had the same things. It's like international restaurants. So, and it was like, well, what more is, there's nothing special about each town or location. Whereas the Algarve, where I have the fortune to live now, then every town is different in it. So if you pick up the sort of four most popular destinations that people choose, you've got Lagos, which is down on the west. Lagos has a beautiful old town, a nice marina, beautiful brown sandy bays and beaches, cliffs. The geography is very unique there, rock pillars and everything. So that's one part of the Algarve. Then if you come towards, say, Albufeira, more of a party place. Villamora, where I am, is the largest marina in Europe, blue flag marina, so it's all clean. Lovely beaches, casino, nightlife, golf, of course, I mustn't forget that. So there's 5 golf courses in Villamora. So again, that's suitable for another type of client. Here we also have Quinta del Lago and Val de Lobo, which are for the rich and famous. Then further on, you have Faro, and then Tavira, Tavira is the least developed, with a really old town, rivers. That the beaches are not actually on the coastline. You get a boat to the beach. So in terms of the geography and the different locations within the Algarve, then there's quite a choice. And so if I was to recommend people who have got, they might come over just to look at property, or they might be coming over for a week, and during that week they'd like to book a day or two with us. That's fine as well. And in terms of enjoying themselves, then I'd still recommend they talk to us, and we say, yeah, I'd recommend this, this, and this. But yeah, I mean, they can go to the different locations where they think that would suit them. All of them are safe. All of them are beautiful in different ways. If people are looking to rent a property out, then Villamora is always very good, because you've got golfers renting out of season. So it just depends where people want to secure a better rental return, or if they want peace and quiet and more relaxed, then probably Tavira is better. Lagos is a bit of everything. So, but if people were coming out to get a flavour of Portugal, then I'd recommend it's just a wealth of beautiful restaurants to sit down at. I'd probably just pick a restaurant near the sea, order Dorada or Ribeiro, which is sea bass or sea bream. I wouldn't even look at the menu. I'd say Dorada or Ribeiro, like say that's nice white fish, chips and tomato salad, small beer or a glass of white wine. Just that's it, basically. That's the lovely thing for Portugal is that. A nice breakfast in the morning with a ham and cheese croissant, a white coffee in a glass, and just to enjoy the sunshine that we've got here now. It's nearly 20 degrees. It's beautiful. And for me, that's one of life's, or the best free commodity on the planet is the sunshine during the cooler, like in summer, you want to be in the shade, but the rest of the year, it's beautiful just to be outside, take a deep breath, and just enjoy being alive, really. So in terms of where people would want to do and enjoy Portugal before they actually start looking at properties, you can just take your pick. It's all fantastic.
Nice, thanks for that. You just made me jealous. I kind of want to move to Portugal now. Sea bream by the beach sounds unreal. But yeah, some great insight where to check out in Portugal there. So when booking a viewing trip, are you guys available? Is there a specific time that people should book a viewing trip? Should they book on weekends, midweeks better? What is more suited to you guys?
Well, so you've got different companies who offer different things in Portugal in terms of viewing trips. So we don't. What used to happen a lot more in the past was that people would subsidize your trip, or they pay for your flights, and then they would meet you at the airport, and they would expect you to be in their car touring properties, sort of almost until you buy. So it was a little bit heavy-handed. I did that in the past with the company I used to work for. I was not one of those people who would be crying or getting upset if my clients chose not to buy. But in terms of Olive Homes, we don't do this sort of forced scenario where we pick you up and drop you back and you're with us all the time. So, but what we can do is obviously pick people up from the airport. Hello, how are you? And we're just normal people like yourselves, and we're just going to show you around. So we can pick you up from the airport, take you to the hotel, and then start showing you properties. That's all part of the service. We all work weekends, and we all work silly hours, so we're always available. But if you sometimes what we have to do is arrange things with developers or architects or other agencies or lawyers and things like that. So probably best to avoid a Sunday, or that can be the day when you just enjoy yourselves when you're out here. Saturday's 50-50. We can normally get most things done on a Saturday, but the ideal day for work is obviously like back in the UK, where Monday to Friday, where everything's available and we can get everything sorted for the clients.
Perfect. And so when people come out, do you recommend they have kind of like a checklist to abide by when viewing a home, or do you think, like you mentioned earlier, to come with an open mind more, and obviously assess the property in the area that they're living in?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's part of the fun, really. I would expect people to be sort of at home, having talked about it, and have a rough idea of what people are after. If people are, looking for, say, an apartment in a condominium, then normally the checklist wouldn't be so thorough, because they probably want, say, modern southern orientation, because most people want south or west orientation to maximize the sun. Looking over the pool, maybe a ground floor is important to some people if they have young children. If you're looking to rent, maybe a ground floor is better, because it probably does get a bit more in the rental returns. Or people are looking for a top floor because they don't want to be on the ground. So those are the sort of considerations for an apartment. If it's a villa, then people might want, they might want to make sure there's what's the heating aspect? Is there underfloor heating, or does the heating come from air conditioning? Do they want a big plot, small plot? High maintenance, low maintenance, they sort of come hand in hand. So sometimes people, they might want a big plot, but if they don't need it, then I have a big plot here, fantastic. But, and I've got 2 youngish children, but really, I bought it, I love it, they love it. But do I want to be paying a lot of money irrigating it each summer? So all of these things you have to sort of take into consideration. But I say to be open-minded, because if I actually sat down with a client and for 20 minutes with a checklist said, describe your exact perfect home, and I ticked every single question that exists, tick, 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 and they say, yeah, we want to be of sea views, we want to be in the countryside, totally private, south facing, walking distance to shops. Yeah. This just doesn't exist sometimes. It's such a perfect property, but it doesn't necessarily exist. So people should come. People should have the pleasure of enjoying making a checklist and what they're after. But then when they come, we still have a good selection of properties to show. Not as many as we used to, because the market is still moving in the way of more demand, less supply. So we're still able to show clients, and most clients are happy and delighted with everything. But do the checklist. But you'll see when you're here that what's available and what we can show. And then I say do it. Some people come with dogs, and then they say they want the plot all fenced in and everything. So it's better, those sort of conversations, if it's very specific, it's best to have them with us before you come out. And then we can really sort of ask more questions than might not be shown on the website typically. So yeah, do a checklist, but when you come, let's have a slightly more open mind to see what else there is and what we can find for you.
Perfect. That's a great insight there. So when customers come, what's kind of something that people overlook when viewing a property? Is there kind of a main trend where people just overlook when we're trying to find their perfect property?
I don't think they're really, it's a good question. And it's sometimes clients say to me, is there a question I should have asked, which I've not asked? And I don't think there's any sort of areas in Portugal that you necessarily should be afraid of, or anything that we miss. When we're with a client and we're in the car, we're talking about the sort of the buying costs and the running costs and how the buying process works and everything. So, and I say to clients, you don't need to write, when I'm telling the client, I say, you don't need to write all this down, because I will remind you every step of the way. I'll be sending an email to say, now what happens is this, don't forget that. Obviously clients need to budget for the buying costs, and that's around 10%. Which is quite high, I suppose, but it just, most of it goes to the government, some of it goes to the lawyers. So people should be aware, it's never usually that high. It usually comes in around 8% or something like that, but it's best to budget 10, and then you've got some change coming. Anything else that people should that sort of forget or don't think of? No, I mean, I think we're lucky, really. A lot of clients who come here have been here before. and even clients who have not been here before usually love it. I think maybe some clients have gone to Spain and they assume it's the same as Spain, but there's quite a lot of differences to Spain. We don't have scooters here, for example, driving here, there, and everywhere. The Portuguese people are a lot quieter, more reserved than the Spanish, so people will see a lot of differences between Spain and Portugal. But there's no sort of trapdoor that anyone's going to fall through and think, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. I think it's all covered. Portugal can be a little bit bureaucratic. For example, the lawyers, when you go to the lawyers and do all the paperwork, when you actually go to do the deed and to finish and get the keys, then you have to go sit in front of a notary, and the notary overviews the lawyers to make sure they've done everything correctly. So the lawyer, obviously back in the UK, when you have your solicitor, it's the same thing, lawyer, solicitor, but back in the UK, the solicitor will ring you on a Friday and say, you now own that, usually on a Friday, you now own that property. We have completed, you own it. Here, the lawyers don't have the capability to do that. They have to go to a notary who's the public official who checks everything. So it's bureaucratic in places, but I think because of that, it just has been very safe. And so I'm not going to criticize the bureaucratic side of it, because it does mean that things are done properly and done well for the safety of everybody. What you shouldn't do, I suppose, and I'm talking about Olive Homes and how we look after people, but you should never hand money over to the vendor straight away. If the vendor says, okay, I'll take it off the market, give me €5,000, you should never do that. Never pay money directly to the vendor. What we do is we ask our clients to pay money to their firm of lawyers, or a firm of lawyers you recommend, and then the lawyer then liaises with the vendor to get all of the paperwork in and make sure everything's all okay, and that person does indeed own that property. So some of the horror stories that you do hear, not very many, but are where people have gone against their common sense really and done something that they shouldn't do. But normally with ourselves and the way we do things, then we would never allow that to happen. So it would always be done the correct way.
Nice. So you would recommend, if someone's going for a viewing trip with you and actually go through the process to buy a property, to always check in with you to ensure that what they're doing is right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if they're viewing with us, then we would be taking them through every step as it should be done. Cool. The firm of lawyers we recommend, I've been dealt with them. I've been recommending clients to them now for sort of over 10 years. So it's a big firm of lawyers who have offices they actually have an office in London. They have an office in Lisbon, Cape Verde, so the Algarve, obviously. So it's a firm that I recommend, and I go there and I'm comfortable because, if you read a book about buying a property in Portugal, it'd probably say, find your own independent lawyer. Don't use somebody that the real estate recommends. And I'm sure it'll say that somewhere. So I understand that. But when somebody comes over, if they haven't done that, there's nothing worse than picking up effectively Yellow Pages, which is, shows my age. But if you pick up Yellow Pages, you're bound to get somebody worse than I recommend. And the company I recommend is, like I say, it's a proper firm. We go to the offices. It's not, they've got a firm where if one person's on holiday, somebody else can cover, because that's a lot of times in the summer where if clients do find a lawyer, maybe a little bit cheaper, that's the way of the world, but a little bit cheaper, but then they're on holiday, they close down for 3 weeks, and then there's nobody covering and nobody can get things done. So usually, best even if people want to contact us and say, what would you advise, we can advise them. But yeah, if they do everything in it with common sense, so they'd come over with a trusted agent. All the agents here that are regulated, we all have the IMPIC license number, it's called, or AMI license. So it's 3 or 4 numbers, and so you can check that on a website to make sure you're dealing with somebody who's and on our website it says we're legally registered. So if that's a good way to check to make sure that you're dealing with the right firm, you should, and then make sure that, okay, as things go on, that you're backed up with a lawyer who's going to look after you.
Nice. Some great insight there. I've got some questions here for after viewing trips. So if someone's really happy with the property they've just viewed, how long do you recommend waiting before putting in a specific offer for that property?
If they're happy with the property they've seen, then it's straight away, without a doubt, because nobody would have ever predicted post pandemic, what's happened to the market out here and across the rest of the world, really. Everyone was locked in their jails where we had no pleasurable lifestyle. And as soon as we escaped, then basically people went crazy for the things they were unable to have, which was sort of fresh air, holidays, and buying property. And I think so many people said, right, we're going to buy a property abroad, and many chose Portugal. So the market's really gone quite crazy and busy since mid 2021. Last year was busy as well, but quieting down a little bit, not so manic, but still busy. To be honest and give good feedback to the clients, so that the viewers and listeners, that the middle of November and December, the inquiries dropped off. So you didn't know, as an estate agent or real estate company, what 2023 might hold. So when a bit quiet. Is it going to pick up? Are the world's problems going to affect the Portuguese market? It would be difficult to tell. But since basically Christmas Day, when obviously people have opened the presents, had their turkey, and then it's like, right, what should we do now? So Christmas Day and onwards, we're getting sort of lots of inquiries every day now. So, we've already done a couple of sales. And so this year, I think, will be a really busy year again, So without a shadow of a doubt, if you see a property and, you want it, then you should immediately make an offer. If the owner's there, we normally recommend not to speak to the owner, but to come away and then put an offer to us. Usually the asking price is the asking price right now, unfortunately, but we'll always try and offer, what we believe is a sensible offer below, maybe 5%. I always say to the clients now, please don't have any expectations I'm going to achieve any discount, because it might not be the case. But we want to be, if we see the property and we like it, and if there's any special conditions, like, well, we want the owner to do this or to do that or paint this or something, then we can say, well, you need these things done. And if the owner's happy to do that, then we should make an offer immediately. Then I'll just sort of explain what happens. So if we make an offer, then there might be a bit back and forwards, but then the vendor says, this is my final price, and the client says, okay, we're happy with it. And that's when I then speak to the vendor, and I say, okay, the vendor would already know this. So we try not to, some agencies here, you would write out a check for £200 and they staple it to the reservation form, and, it gets ripped off if they don't go ahead. So it's all a bit silly, really, because there's no real firm commitment there. But what we do as a company is, if you're my client and you see the property of your dreams and you say, I want it, then we say, right, we negotiate, we agree the price. Brilliant. Stage one. So then I would then ring up the lawyers, make an appointment. We go to the lawyers. You would then put down a reservation fee, say £5,000. That goes to the lawyer, but it stays in the lawyer's client's account. It's protected by them. It's not mine. It's not going to the vendor. And then the lawyers then do the due diligence on the property. So they will check that the person owns it, check that any debt will be cleared upon at the end of the process on completion. Check that the planning permission was there, habitation license, no motorways are going to be built through it. So the lawyer will check all of that information, and then they will say to the client, everything's all okay. We're happy for you to proceed to purchase that property. And then the client would then forward a percentage of the property value, maybe 20%. And then that money would be used to sign a promissory contract, which is similar to an exchange of contracts back home. So when that promissory contract is signed, that's it. People are going to lose money if you try and back out after that stage. Now, it might take 2 weeks to get to that promissory contract stage because of the due diligence that the lawyers has to make. So if you see a property, make the offer, do the reservation. The reservation stays with the lawyers and can go back to you at any time. But basically, make the reservation, see the lawyers, make the reservation, and then we've got 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, I speak to the vendor and say, look, please don't show it to anybody else. My clients are serious. I'm professional. I'm not going to let you down. And then he or she would say, or they would say, okay, David, that's fine. We won't show it to anybody else. And then we wait for those 2 weeks. Then the promissory contract is signed, and then everybody's happy because they've got the property they wanted. But if you go home and you start thinking about it, then you're likely to lose it. But I think most people would know that that's a risk, And then obviously, if clients are out next week, it's still not as busy, but as busy as later in the year. But by sort of February, March, then it gets busier. The half-term week in February, and then spring, summer, we'll be rushed off our feet again then. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. If you want to buy it, don't hesitate. If you need some time to think about it, I understand. Do so, but try not to lose the property if you found it.
Nice. So when an offer is made, what's the average timeline to expect sort of like a response from that, to if they accept the terms on which how much you've
Well, on a place in the sun, it's like 1 minute on a TV program. I just get okay. So when I make an offer, I try to expect an immediate answer actually from the vendor or from the owner, because what I would say is, let's do an example. So the owner is called John. Hi, John. I've got a really nice client with me at the moment called Ryan Timms. He's got it's a cash purchase. The money's in the bank account. I've been with him all day today. He works for your overseas home. Really nice guy and really serious. And he's looking at the property. We've compared it to other ones. There is another one he likes as well. But I've gone through the figures with him, and really we feel like a fair offer from him, and it's probably as most he can go to is 400,000 euros. The good news is he said to me, if you accept that, then I've already introduced the lawyer to him. So if you accept that now, we will immediately go to the lawyers and do the reservation of 6,000 euros. And he will do 20% in the next 2 weeks. And the rest, the deed at the end, maybe sort of another 3 or 4 weeks after that. If you're happy with this price, then we'll go and do it now. And so I'm trying to make it a quick completion for your benefit by saying it's all going to be quick. It's going to be efficient. And hopefully then, even if he wanted a little bit more, he should take the offer because it's there. You're serious. You're going to do the reservation. It's not like, will you just take it? Oh, thanks very much. Bye. So I would explain to you before I make that offer that that's how I'm going to do it. So it's no surprise to you. And then I would say, right, that's the offer I'm going to make. And right, let's do it. And then we would go. So the timescales then usually would be you make the offer, do the reservation, 2 to 3 weeks after, promissory contract. And then usually, so once we've done the promissory contract, which is like the exchange, both parties are relaxed then. You've bought it. If the owner pulls out, you're going to get your money back and some more. If you pull out, you'll lose your money. So usually when the exchange or the promissory contract is done, both parties are relaxed. And then after that, it could be 2 or 3 weeks after. When is convenient for you? When's convenient for you? Does he need to move furniture out? Do you want to move furniture in? Is there anything to organize? No. Well, then usually a month after that. So usually if you found something and you made an offer and it was accepted, then you'd be looking at 6 weeks from then that you would own it. And it can be done in 2 weeks if everybody rushed around. But usually 6 weeks or maybe 2 months when everything's gone through, and then you've got the keys.
Nice. So that's all the questions. Thank you very much for those answers. That's all the questions I have for today. So that's some really great insight there. So thanks, David. So we've actually got quite a few questions to roll through on the questions tab. So the first one, do you deal with clients with a price range up to £18,000? So is there sort of like is there a minimum and a maximum amount that you deal with?
So yes, realistically, there is a minimum, no maximum, fortunately. But nowadays, because prices have gone up, if people are going to buy sort of a typical, let's call it a studio apartment. So studio means no bedroom as such, but they often do make one. But in effect, the building is a rectangle with a bathroom and a lounge with a sofa bed or something. So there's no bed. So that's that we call a T0. But so if a studio in the Algarve nowadays is probably upwards of 150,000 euros for one that if I took a client to, they'd say, this is really nice. I like it. So that's the sort of figure we're looking at as a minimum for what most people are looking to buy. If people look to try and find something less than that, then it might be they're looking for a piece of land and they might put a wooden house on, or eco living, or usually less than that. Those are the sort of inquiries we deal with. We don't really deal with that. It's not really where we're strong or our strengths, but there is a portal called Idealista. So it's idealista.pt. So it's a Portuguese portal, and on there you get a lot of owners who put like agricultural land or smaller plots and things like that for sale. So if we were with a client and they said this is the sort of thing we're after, then usually we say, okay, look, go and have a look on there, and that's the best place to find the more, the affordable projects or pieces of land at the lower end. But it's not really our bag. But and obviously we get paid a commission by the vendor, by the owner. So if sometimes a client will come to us and say, right, David, we like to deal with you, but we've actually found this property advertised by another agency and another agency. So, and that's fine. We can deal with all the other agencies. That's how it works. So, and it would work that if I dealt with another agency, we shared a commission. So we both get half of it, and that's fine as well. We don't mind doing that. But when it gets down to the smaller end, so for example, a property of sort of 20,000 euros or a piece of land at 20,000 euros, obviously the commission becomes a lot less. And for me to be getting involved, it makes it even more difficult, really. So usually I just say, go to that website, and there you'll find owners who have got properties like that for sale.
Nice. So we've got some other questions come in as well. Yeah, thank you for that response. So someone's asked, to set up a viewing trip, does it cost if a property deal is not made due to not meeting their expectations?
How much does it cost?
So to set up a viewing trip, does it cost if the property deal is not made not to meeting the expectations? So if they're on a viewing trip and they put in the cost of a property, but it doesn't meet expectations, how much would that viewing trip cost them overall, or would it cost them overall?
Yeah. So, okay. So as I said earlier, we don't really. So there are other companies out there who you can probably pay them like 100 euros per person, and you'd fly out with them, and they would pick you up, and they would pay for your hotel. So they would usually not charge, even if you don't buy something, they would normally not charge you for that experience. But you might find it a bit awkward when, if they might be saying, oh, let's go in and see the manager, and why aren't you buying? And so you're more confined, you're more slightly under an obligation to try to find something if you're in a viewing trip that's organized by the estate agent. If you come with us, then we would normally say you book your own flights, book your own hotel, but we can pick you up from the hotel and tour you around for 3 to 4 days, and then drop you back to the hotel or drop you back to the airport. I can do that. I can do a subsidized viewing trip. It's not a problem. I could organize something like that. We pick you up, we pay for your hotel, but I'd rather somebody buys through me and I say, here's a check for £200. I don't care. If you want £200 as a thank you very much. We normally give you a bottle of bubbly anyway, so I say there you are, there's 4 bottles of bubbly. Thank you very much. Rather than confine the client, I just feel more comfortable with that as the way we do it. Now, if you actually came out on a viewing trip, you went to see the lawyers and you reserved the property, and they did a week's worth of due diligence to check that, and all of a sudden the property is illegal or there's an issue, then the lawyer will not charge you for that work because of our influence. Because they get enough business from us. So if Mr. and Mrs. Smith reserve a property and then it's illegal, well then first of all, why didn't I know it's illegal in the first place? I should know before promoting it. So I've probably been hoodwinked a little bit, or what, why did that come about? So I would tell the lawyers, look, I know you've done a bit of work on there, but I don't want you to charge a client. It's not fair. And then the 6,000 or 5,000 pounds rather, the client may have put down. Sometimes I say 6,000 euros. If it's Irish client, 6,000 euros. British client, 5,000 pounds. The 5,000 pounds will then just be refunded back. Now, the only cost sometimes happens is if the exchange rates change within a week, then it might be 50 pounds less, or it might be 50 pounds more, because you're transferring back the money you transferred over. But if you do not buy a property, it shouldn't cost you anything. And apart from obviously your flights to come over and your accommodation during that time, if you came over purposefully for that and you've not found what you're after, then obviously it's been a bit of a waste of time, or it's been good research. But if somebody came over with me and said, I'm definitely coming over, blah, 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 and then we spent 3 or 4 days looking around, and then they said, oh, we've not found what we're looking for. and David, you promised this villa was fantastic and it's not as good as you thought it would be, and and I'd say, okay, well, like, how can I make it up to you? So it's, again, if I felt that somebody felt really upset that they're out of pocket on something, then we as a company, we wouldn't sort of hesitate in trying to make sure they're happy and do it again. But usually, you only pay for the property and all the buying costs. So the what we call the IMT, or transfer tax, which is the big chunk of costs, the lawyer's fees, the land registry fee, the notary fee, all of that is done at the deed, which is at the escritura, or at completion. So it's all at the end. So everything before that is just sort of due diligence and making sure everything's all in place. Even a promissory contract, you exchange your money, your 20% or whatever it is, but all the fees come at the end. So if you stop at any stage before the promissory contract, you should get everything back, apart from out-of-pocket expenses like a hotel if you stayed in it, because, well, that's just one of those things, you know.
Nice, perfect. So yeah, we've got a few more questions as well. Actually had quite a few come in. So I know you touched on this earlier, but Michael has asked, who does most of the work when buying properties? Is it the estate agents or lawyers?
I'd probably say us, and the lawyers would probably say them. But no, I think we do most of the work, because what we have to do is we do have to check the paperwork initially, just before we promote it. So we do have to say, you know, is the swimming pool on the paperwork? Are there any sort of is there a habitation line? So we do a very early preliminary check on the property to make sure it seems that everything's fine. And then we can promote it. If we got any issues, we might put something in the description, say this pool will be allowed to be there, but it doesn't have full planning permission yet, or something like that. And often that is the case. Sometimes people build pools because they know they can, but they should get planning permission, really. So in terms of the workload, then obviously the clients come out with us. We go around showing different places. So we spend more time on the road with the clients. We'll do all the running around after as well. So connecting utilities, opening a bank account. If a client comes out without a mortgage, we can take them to the bank to get the mortgage all done. So there's a lot more services we do. Sometimes I think with the lawyers, you know, the firm I recommend are fantastic. With an apartment, sometimes it's like last week they did apartment A, this week is apartment C. You know, I think surely it's the same job, isn't it, really? But of course they charge their fees. That's the way. I can't do much about that. But so sometimes I think that's quite a simpler process for lawyers. But obviously, if they're checking with it when it comes to a detached villa, there's a lot more work for them to do then. You know, so sometimes. And last week we had a Ukrainian client who purchased a property who couldn't release his money until he had a copy of the deed. And so there's a lot of complications, and other times there's not. Or even the client, you as a client might be straightforward, and you might be buying the apartment that's quite straightforward, but the owner is, for example, a French client who's inherited that property from their French parents, subject to a will in France, and all of a sudden we're like, oh gosh, why did this have to crop up, you know? And then the lawyer does earn their money and more by the hard work that they do to try and resolve these things. But usually I'd say we do more of the work, but the lawyers are vital for the protection of the clients and for my sanity, that they get involved and make sure everything's all okay as well.
Nice, thank you for that. It's a good insight then into what to do for the legal process. So we actually had an interesting question from Roger. So he's asking about with apartment blocks close to the sea and popular resorts, is there sometimes a problem of kind of antisocial behavior by some owners abroad, or anyone kind of traveling on holiday?
Well, yes, there always will be, I suppose. So Albufeira I mentioned, I mean, I'm just going to be, it's my opinion, and I guess we're all entitled to our opinions, but the busiest places in terms of sort of, when we say antisocial, I guess people drinking too much, shouting, whatever, then the busiest places for people who want to go and party are Albufeira. So the center of Albufeira is a party place. And I would say in Portimao a little bit, Praia Rocha, that area has got a sort of a busy British feel to it. So people are drinking and dancing and stuff. But usually, like the wonderful thing about Portugal is, and I'm 53, and I feel like you don't. When I grew up as a young chap, and I was probably part of antisocial behaviour as well, drinking too much. So we've probably all done it. But uh, like that stopped in England when you're 21 or something. You're sick of it because you start drinking when you're younger. You go in the pub, you drink excessively. You come out the pub, you go to a nightclub, and by the time you're in your mid-20s or something, you're probably sick of that life in England, and it's so intense, and it's not the right way to do things. Because when you're out here, then I've got two young boys. I've also got a young daughter. So my daughter's 18, so they're 18, 7, and 5. But I go to, when my daughter says I'm going to a sunset party on the beach, and she's 18, and I say, which one then? She says, so I said, I'm going as well. I'll see you there then. So we go there, and then they're playing music like ABBA, and then they'll play a little bit of other, the boom, boom, boom music. But, so and then there's old people like myself, and, and then young people and older than people than me, like grandmothers, grandparents and stuff. And so, to honestly answer the question, there are places where you're going to see antisocial behavior, but you just wouldn't go there unless you're a hardcore party drinking person. But if you just take those places away, then the rest of Portugal really does lend itself to not going out and drinking. We can do what you want, but the reality is that this mixture of age groups and not that I'm keeping an eye on my daughter, but it's just a different cultural thing here. People go out, people don't leave to go out and start having a drinking evening until sort of 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They probably go out for a meal, a glass of wine, and then they're having mojitos or something, the Brazilian drink or whatever, dancing on the beach, having a good time. So all of the people, the objective of a good night out is to really enjoy it and suck up the wonderful atmosphere, rather than be intensely drunk and acting poorly. So in answer to the question, there are pockets of bad behavior, but I think that's probably everywhere in the world. But you've got the best chance of that not ruining your apartment. And if you chose Villamor, for example, then that's not an issue. You've got a nice apartment near the sea or near the marina. Cortera's next to Villamor, that's lovely. Lagos is fine. So and even Albufeira is just certain areas. The rest are fine. So I would say if it shouldn't stop you coming to buy a property in Portugal. We would just take you away from those areas, and everything else is fine. Yeah.
So when they came to you, if they come on a viewing trip, you could suggest the areas not to obviously look at where that sort of behaviour is going on. So obviously we can do a bit of research before to ensure that doesn't happen as well. But yeah, we got one more question today. We've had a lot of good topics covered here. So we got the last question. I know, going from one extreme to the other, going from drinking on beaches to now golden visas. So this question saying, looking for contracts to exploring golden visas properties in Portugal. I think they're just asking what's the how abouts do you go about getting one of those?
Okay, so golden visa, for people who don't know, golden visa was a scheme brought in by the government over 10 years ago to encourage overseas investment at a time of when the world was a gloomy place and the countries were struggling for money. So basically Portugal's put in this incentive to say, if you're non-European, because the Europeans don't need it, now, because of Brexit, British people can get a golden visa, but predominantly in the past it was Turkish, non-EU, Middle East, China, Russia, Americans, Canadians. So anybody not in the EU basically could apply for a golden visa. And the golden visa meant that by investing a minimum of 500,000 euros, and now that's changed that criteria a little bit, but by investing a minimum of 500,000 euros, you could have residency here. They would grant you residency here for 5 years, basically, and that means you could come and go as you wish for those 5 years. Then by coming and going as you wish for those 5 years, on the 6th year you could apply for a Portuguese citizenship. So basically, you can have a Portuguese passport. I have Portuguese and British. Basically, that was what the golden visa was all about. Either for people who weren't in the EU, who wanted to live or study or work in Portugal, invest $500,000, and then you can be here all the time, and ultimately you can have a Portuguese citizenship at the end, subject to a small Portuguese language test. So that was what it was all about. So we can do golden visas. Basically, if a client comes over to see us, we can recommend where they buy and what. And then the firm of lawyers I recommend, they are one of the leading firms who do golden visa applications. So we would find the property that the clients invest in, and then we would then take them to the firm of lawyers, and then they would do the application for the golden visa. Now, what changed in January last year, a year ago, was that the Portuguese government said, no more investing in Lisbon, please. No more investing in Porto. No more investing in the areas that has seen too much demand because prices have gone up too much. So they reduced the criteria to say, if you want a golden visa, you have to do it in the extremities of the Algarve or inland or on the western coast. So you can't buy anything anywhere now. It has to be quite a selected investment. But what you can get is sort of touristic apartments anywhere, or business premises like shops or offices you can buy, and that will qualify. So it's become a little bit more restricted. The government hasn't taken it away yet. They talk about it, but so from it being everything, it's now restricted. The thoughts are probably in a year or two they might take it away, because the reason it was brought in is no longer here, because the Portuguese economy is booming, the property market is booming, so they don't need it anymore, and there's pressure on the government to say, let's take it away now. But yeah, we can help with that. So any client who's interested in golden visa, we can help find the property subject to the new criteria, and introduce the lawyers and do everything for them.
Perfect.
We've got information on the website about that as well, if they need.
Yeah, we've had a few people on the questions tab asking how they get in contact with you. So would you recommend going through your website, and is that the best way for them to get hold of you?
Yeah, so it's olivehomes.com. My email address, the easiest way is david@olivehomes.com. Or if you want to do my full name, david.rowat, ROWAT, @olivehomes.com. But I'm on the website. David@olivehomes.com will get to me. Or if you go through to the website, there'll be info and then click on there and just say contact us. We got lots of different places you can contact us on the website. So just say, I was on the Your Overseas Home webinar and David was fantastic, and now I'd like to speak to him, please, about ABC, and then I'll hopefully help.
Exactly. Hopefully we can get some viewerships booked in from this webinar.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, as mentioned, you can get contact David via direct email communication, or they are actually one of our partners on our website, which you can contact as well. So that's all we have time for today. It's come up to 50 minutes. So thank you very much for all the questions asked today. So I want to give a final thanks to David for your insightful
You're welcome.
advice. We strongly recommend you get in touch with Olive Homes directly to discuss your requirements in detail. Thank you to all of our viewers for watching the session today. We wish you all the best for your overseas move. We have various other resources available to help you with your buying journey, including guides and other webinar recordings. So do take a look at our website. So thank you very much, David, again. And then thanks, and happy property hunting to all.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Nice one. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.